have to get to now. This is breaking news out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida here this afternoon. The jury has reached a verdict now in the trial of Scot Peterson. He is the former school resource officer charged with felony child neglect for allegedly failing to confront the Parkland school shooter during the Marjory Stoneman Douglas school shooting in February of 2018. And so you're getting a live look there right into the courtroom right now as this is happening. Again, the jury has reached their verdict in the trial of Scot Peterson. I want to now bring in Brian Buckmeyer. He is our ABC News legal contributor to break this down for us. Brian, this is a case that many have been watching now over the years. Of course, after this happened, many people also saw the video, saw the time it took for the response to happen there at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. So, Brian, what can we expect here from the jury as we know they have now reached a verdict?
So the jury's going to come to either one of two decisions. Either Scot Peterson should have run into Marjory Stoneman Douglas School when he heard the shots and saved the children on the third floor, because that's the only floor we're talking about here, or he did, as his lawyers argued, and took tactical retreat, informed other officers of what occurred, and he did his due diligence. But there is one question as well that I think the jury might have really been wrestling with, is whether or not a school resource officer is a caretaker based on the definition in the law.
All right, Brian, as you can see, and I don't know if you can see, but we're showing our audience, we're taking a live look into the courtroom there, and as soon as they do read this verdict, we will listen in live till we hear this. But do we know all of the charges that he is facing here? He's facing several. Can we go over those?
Yeah, so a number of the charges are child neglect. There's also, then child neglect goes for each of the children that had died inside, the understanding being that he neglected to do his duty as a child caregiver. But again, like I said earlier, the question is a school resource officer, someone who's meant to basically secure the premise, make sure there's no danger, are they a caretaker? There's also assault charges, or not assault charges, charges associated with his derelict of duty, you might argue, for not jumping into the fray.
Right. We've heard people say, and including legal experts, that they can't think of a case where someone has been charged with not going into harm's way. And I think that's what you're touching on there. And we're talking about 7 counts of child neglect and 3 counts of this culpable negligence and 1 count of perjury as well. So he is the first law enforcement agent in U.S. history that has ever been tried for an alleged failure to act during a school shooting. Brian, in your opinion, could this decision set a precedence for law enforcement and school resource officers across this country?
Absolutely. So there is a difference. This is a school resource officer rather than officer, but one would argue it's a slippery slope. If this comes down that he's guilty, we're going to be Monday morning quarterbacking officers to say, did you rush into the line of fire quick enough? Did you take a strategic cover? Did you do this? Did you do this? And when it comes to actively doing something, rather than we're just saying, oh, you didn't, or you pushing him to go forward is going to change things.
19-7166 CF10A, State of Florida plaintiff versus Scot Peterson defendant. Verdict, count 1. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count 2. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count 3. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all, this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count 4. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all, this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count 5. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count 6. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all this 29th day of June 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count 7. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all, this 29th day of June, 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count 8. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all, this 29th day of June, 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count 9. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all, this 29th day of June, 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count 10. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all, this 29th day of June, 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Verdict, count 11. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all, this 29th day of June, 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to address you only by the numbers that are on the back of your badges. Juror number 1, are these your true verdicts?
Yes, they are.
Juror number 2, are these your true verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 4, are these your true verdicts? Juror number 5, are these your true verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 6, are these your true verdicts? Juror number 7, are these your true verdicts? Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you for your time and consideration of this case. I also wish to advise you of some very special privileges enjoyed by jurors. No juror can ever be required to talk about the discussions that occurred in the jury room except by court order. For many centuries, our society has relied upon juries for consideration of difficult cases. We have recognized for hundreds of years that a jury's deliberations, discussions, and votes should remain their private affair as long as they wish it. Therefore, the law gives you a unique privilege not to speak about the jury's work. Although you are at liberty to speak with anyone about your deliberations, you are also at liberty to refuse to speak to anyone. A request to discuss either your verdict or your deliberations may come from those who are simply curious, from those who might seek to find fault with you, from the media, from the attorneys, or elsewhere. It will be up to each of you to decide whether to preserve your privacy as a juror. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to again give you my sincere thanks for your time, effort, and energy. 99% of the citizens that live in Broward County, a county of 2 million, have no idea what happens when you're actually selected on a jury and you actually serve through the process. But now you all know. And I know most people don't say thank you, but I will say thank you because I know the time, effort, and energy that went into this. I have a thank you letter and a certificate. I'm going to give that to the court deputy who's going to pass that out when they walk you out because it has your names on them. The reason I normally do this in person in the courtroom, but I'm not going to do it today, is because I'm not and have not addressed you by your names. That's why we use the numbers in care of your privacy. I did also want to let you all know I will be entering an order today that instructs the clerk of court, the trial court administrator, as well as both parties not to disclose your names. Okay? So the only way your names are going to be disclosed is if you choose. You certainly may choose. So if you want to go out there and talk to whoever you want to talk to, you're perfectly entitled to do that. If you want to go out there and never talk to another human being about this ever again, you're perfectly entitled to do that too. I want to emphasize that it's each of your decisions to make. But momentarily, I'm going to have you step in the back.
And you are looking in right now on a courtroom in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where Scot Peterson, who's now 60 years old, was the school resource deputy at Stoneman Douglas High School back in 2018 when a shooter entered the school there in Parkland, Florida, killed 17 students and staff members. Now you're seeing some people shaking their heads. Not everybody supports the judge's decision today, but he just said that Scot Peterson is not guilty on all of the charges levied against him, which included 7 counts of child neglect and 3 counts of culpable negligence. Prosecutors in this case alleged that his inaction contributed to the deaths of 3 victims and the injury of 4 others. Prosecutors say that he knew the shooter was inside the building during that 6-minute attack and did not confront him. He's the first law enforcement agent in the United States to ever be tried for an alleged failure to act during a school shooting. And there you see him with his gray hair hugging his lawyer there, an incredibly emotional moment for him. He has been sobbing through the entire speech from the judge there. You see his lawyer now crying as well. Tears of relief on their end. That relief not shared by many of the family members that are also in that courtroom prior to this. We have heard from family members of children at Stoneman Douglas High School. They've said he's guilty, he's part of the problem. They went on to call him a coward. So this is certainly a precedent-setting ruling that you're seeing here right now playing out in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. With me right now, we have Brian Buckmeyer, our ABC News legal contributor. Also, Victor Akendo is on the phone with us, and he's in Florida, and he covered this shooting when it happened. And these are some of the ramifications that you see play out for the years after a shooting like this. And so Scot Peterson was facing up to 95 years in prison. He was also potentially facing the loss of his pension. And so, Brian, I'd like to ask you first, I'd like to get your reaction to this judge's ruling. As you and I discussed earlier, this really is a precedent-setting case.
Exactly, and this verdict could have gone either way. Like you said, people in this community refer to him as a coward. I think they actually call him the coward of Broward, based on the name of the county. And many people also thought that he did what he could have in that situation. I think the defense did a very good job of putting on enough witnesses and the right witnesses to say it was chaos there. No one knew exactly where the shooting was coming from. No one knew exactly where to go. And taking a tactical position rather than just running in like Rambo was the better thing to do. And I think this is precedent setting in the sense of if there is some good action by the officer to try to do something, not just run in the opposite direction, that the law will protect them. And so I think that helps law enforcement understand where the line is.
It certainly does. Brian, thank you.